November 23, 1943, 28,000 feet above the German coast south of Wilhelmshaven. The air is thin here and brutally cold, so cold that frost spiders across the inside of Second Lieutenant Davy Foster's Perspex canopy. He's 19 years old, fresh from training in the sunshine of Florida, and now suspended in a cathedral of lethal, sub-zero blue. Below him, the cloud deck is a rumpled white blanket, hiding the enemy. Around him, the air thrums with the power of 36 Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engines, the combined might of his squadron, the 358th Fighter Squadron, and the two others that form the 355th Fighter Group. They are the little friends, the guardians of the B-17 flying fortresses lumbering towards their target. Davy's world is the cockpit of his Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. It is less a cockpit and more a cramped, vibrating metal cell. The smell is a unique cocktail of high-octane fuel, hydraulic fluid, and the faint, metallic scent of his own oxygen mask. His hands, covered in thick leather gloves, rest on the control stick. It's alive, shivering with the force of the 2,000-horsepower engine trying to tear itself from the fuselage. The P-47 is a beast. At over 7 tons, it is the largest and heaviest single-engine fighter of the war. On the ground, it's clumsy, a juggernaut. Pilots call it the Jug. But up here, at this altitude, it is a finely honed weapon of astonishing speed and power. For 2 hours, the mission has been a monotonous drone. The slow, agonizing crawl across the North Sea. The tension is a physical thing, a knot in the stomach that never quite loosens. Every flicker in the sky, every glint of sun on a distant object could be a flight of Messerschmitts. Davy's eyes ache from the strain of scanning the infinite, empty sky. He feels the immense weight of his responsibility. Protect the bombers. Don't get separated. Follow the flight leader. The rules were simple, drilled into him until they were muscle memory. Then the radio crackles, not with the calm procedural chatter of the flight, but with a new urgency. "Bandits, 3 o'clock high, looks like Focke-Wulfs." Davy's head snaps to the right. There they are, black specks like angry hornets peeling out of the sun. The sky, once empty, is suddenly a maelstrom. The German fighters' FW-190s slash through the bomber formation with terrifying speed. Tracers, like incandescent red needles, stitch across the blue canvas. The air fills with the chaotic symphony of war, the deep cough of the bombers' 50 caliber machine guns, the sharp, angry buzz of cannon fire, and the frantic calls over the radio. His flight leader, Captain Miller, bangs hard. "Yellow flight, engage! Stick together!" But in the swirling chaos of a dogfight, plans evaporate. A lone FW-190, its radial engine cowling painted in a predatory yellow, dives past Davy's wingman. It's a classic bounce. The German pilot is good, fast, and now he's lining up on a straggling B-17. Davy sees the bomber, its tail gunner already firing in desperation. Instinct, adrenaline, and the hubris of youth take over. The rules vanish. He breaks formation. He pushes the stick forward and to the left, rolling his massive Thunderbolt onto its back and pulling through into a steep earthward dive. The maneuver is smooth, practiced. He has the German in his sights. The world is now framed by his reflector gun sight, a glowing orange circle painted on the sky. The FW-190 grows larger, filling the glass. The engine's roar escalates to a scream. The vibration in the airframe intensifies, a deep shudder that he can feel in his teeth. His airspeed indicator needle begins a relentless climb. 350, 400, 450 miles per hour. The pressure in his ears builds. Below, a break in the clouds reveals the patchwork green and brown of the German countryside, impossibly far away, yet rushing up to meet him with terrifying speed. The German pilot hasn't seen him yet. Davy's thumb hovers over the red firing button on his control stick. Just a little closer, just a few more seconds. The thrill of the chase, the primal hunter's instinct consumes him. This is what he trained for. This is the moment of truth. But the P-47 is heavy, and gravity is a powerful, unforgiving master. The plane is accelerating faster than he anticipated. The scream of the wind over the canopy is becoming a deafening, high-pitched shriek. He is no longer just flying. He is falling.
The altimeter is a blur. The needle spins counterclockwise, unwinding altitude at a sickening rate. 20,000 feet, 18,000, 15,000. The German FW-190 is still in his sights, but something is wrong. The air around the P-47 feels different. It's thick, heavy, like trying to swim through molasses. A violent buffeting begins to shake the aircraft, a deep, resonant shudder that seems to originate in the very bones of the wings. It's not the familiar vibration of the engine. This is something new, something violent and alien. Davy Foster decides the chase is over. He's gone too far, dived too steeply. It's time to pull out. He tightens his grip on the control stick and pulls back, expecting the nose to rise, to feel the familiar crushing weight of G-forces pressing him into his seat. Nothing happens. He pulls harder. The stick doesn't budge. It's as if it's been welded to the floor, encased in a block of concrete. A cold spike of adrenaline, sharper and more terrifying than the thrill of the chase, lances through him. He puts both hands on the stick, plants his feet on the rudder pedals for leverage, and heaves with all the strength his 19-year-old body can muster. The stick moves, perhaps a fraction of an inch, before locking solid again. Panic begins to cloud his thoughts. The ground, once a distant map, is now a detailed, fast-approaching reality. He can see individual fields, trees, a road. "Yellow 4 to yellow leader, I can't pull up." His voice, tight with fear, cracks over the radio. "My stick is frozen, I can't pull up." He is experiencing a phenomenon that pilots fear, but few truly understand. It has a name: compressibility. At sea level, air is a fluid flowing smoothly over a wing to create lift. But at the speeds Davy is reaching, approaching the speed of sound, air stops behaving like a gentle fluid. It begins to compress. Pockets of air moving over the curved surfaces of his wings and tail are being accelerated to supersonic speeds, creating invisible walls of pressure, shock waves. These shock waves are forming directly over his elevators, the control surfaces on the horizontal tail that make the plane go up or down. The turbulent, high-pressure air behind the shockwave is like a storm, effectively blanketing the elevators, rendering them useless. His stick is connected by cables and pulleys to these control surfaces, but it doesn't matter how hard he pulls. The elevators cannot fight through the wall of supersonic air holding them prisoner. In essence, his P-47 Thunderbolt, one of the most advanced flying machines in the world, is no longer an aircraft. It has become a 7-ton, unguided projectile. His training had warned him about high-speed dives in the jug. Instructors had spoken of a barrier, a point of no return where the controls would get heavy. But the lectures were abstract, clinical. They hadn't prepared him for this. The sheer, immovable stubbornness of the controls, the feeling of absolute powerlessness as the earth swells in the canopy. He tries the rudder. It responds sluggishly, yawing the plane but doing nothing to arrest the terrifying plunge. He tries the ailerons to roll the plane, hoping a change in attitude might break the lock. The response is slow, mushy. The buffeting grows worse, the entire airframe shaking so violently he fears the wings will be ripped from their roots. The shriek of the slipstream is now a sound beyond hearing, a physical pressure that seems to squeeze the cockpit itself. 10,000 feet. Captain Miller's voice cuts through the static, distant and tinny. "Davy, throttle back, try to roll out of it." But it's too late for that. The ground is no longer a landscape, it's a destination, arriving in seconds. The intricate details of a German farm rush up at him. He sees a barn, a dirt road, a line of trees. In his mind, a final, horrifying clarity descends. This is it. This is how it ends. Not in a blaze of glory fighting Messerschmitts, but as a crater in a foreign field, the victim of a battle against physics he never knew he was fighting. His training has failed him. His strength has failed him. His machine has failed him. There is nothing left to do.
Seconds stretch into an eternity. The mind, faced with its own imminent extinction, works in strange ways. For Davy Foster, trapped in his plummeting coffin, the world shrinks to the confines of the cockpit. It is a chaotic space filled with the dials of dying instruments, the smell of his own sweat, and the unbearable noise of his own impending death. The detailed landscape filling his windscreen is a sight he cannot bear to watch. He is no longer a pilot. He is a passenger on a one-way trip. The carefully ordered sequence of training, the emergency procedures drilled into him on dusty airfields back home, evaporates in the pure, white-hot furnace of terror. His actions are no longer governed by logic, but by a primal, desperate instinct to simply do something, anything. His left hand, which had been gripping the throttle, starts to flail. It brushes against the cool metal of the cockpit wall, searching for a switch, a lever, any mechanism that might offer a sliver of hope. His eyes dart around the instrument panel, not reading the dials, but seeing them as a meaningless collage. In this moment of supreme panic, his gaze falls upon a small wheel mounted on the left side of the cockpit, just below the throttle quadrant. It's the elevator trim wheel. Every fiber of his training screams at him not to touch it. Elevator trim is a delicate instrument. It controls a small, hinged surface on the elevator itself, called a trim tab. Its purpose is to make fine adjustments to relieve the pressure on the control stick during long, straight flight, allowing the pilot to fly hands-off. You use it to trim for a gentle climb or a stable descent. You absolutely, under penalty of death, do not touch it during violent maneuvers or at catastrophically high speeds. The forces involved are immense. At this velocity, a sudden major adjustment of the trim tab could have explosive consequences. It could rip the entire elevator assembly clean off the tail. The aircraft, suddenly unstable, would tumble end over end, disintegrating in a matter of seconds. It was a control for finesse, not for brute force recovery. Pulling the stick was the right way. Using the trim was suicide. But the stick was frozen. The right way wasn't working. Davy Foster is not thinking about aerodynamic principles or structural integrity. He is thinking about the green field and the red-roofed barn that now fill his entire world. The thought process is simple, animalistic. The stick won't move the tail up. The trim wheel also moves the tail up. Move the trim wheel. He grabs the wheel. It's stiff. It's not meant to be cranked rapidly. He puts his full force into it, his gloved hand straining. He rolls it back towards himself in the nose-up direction. He keeps rolling it, past any normal setting, past the markings on the indicator. He is feeding in an extreme amount of nose-up trim, an input so radical it would be unthinkable in any other circumstance. He can feel the mechanics of the system groaning in protest through the airframe, a deep, grinding sensation transmitted up through the metal of his seat. The plane continues its death plunge. For a horrifying second, nothing happens. He has chosen his final act, and it appears to be a futile one. He has pulled the wrong lever, played his last desperate card, and the universe has not responded. He braces himself, a silent scream caught in his throat. He is out of time, out of altitude, and out of ideas. The farm is no longer an image. It is a physical presence, so close he can almost feel the texture of the earth. He closes his eyes, waiting for the final violent impact that will obliterate him and his 7-ton machine, scattering them both across the German countryside. He has grabbed the forbidden control, the one he was told would kill him, and now he waits for the prophecy to be fulfilled. The wings should be ripping off any second. The response, when it comes, is not the gentle lift of recovery. It is an act of pure, mechanical violence. It is as if a giant, unseen hand has reached out and slapped the P-47 from below. Instead of the wings ripping off, the nose of the Thunderbolt pitches up with a brutal, bone-jarring ferocity. The G-forces are instantaneous and immense. Davy Foster is slammed down into his seat with a force that feels like it could pulverize his spine. His body, which moments before was weightless in the dive, now weighs thousands of pounds. The blood rushes from his head. His vision, already narrowed by panic, tunnels into a small gray circle. Then, the gray turns to black. He is conscious, but he cannot see. The world outside the canopy has vanished, replaced by a sightless void. The aircraft itself is screaming. The sound is not of the wind, but of metal under a strain it was never designed to bear. The wings, engineered to withstand immense stress, flex and groan. Rivets strain against their holes. The entire airframe shudders, not with the high-frequency buffeting of compressibility, but with the low, agonizing groan of a structure on the absolute ragged edge of disintegration. Davy is a passenger again, but this time he is being hurled not towards the earth, but away from it. The P-47, its nose pointed skyward, is bleeding off speed and altitude at a ferocious rate. It carves a massive, upward arc through the sky, a violent pendulum swing from vertical death dive to vertical climb. What his panicked action had done was stumble upon a brute force solution to a complex aerodynamic problem. The control stick, connected to the main elevator surface, was powerless because the shock wave had locked that surface in place. But the trim tab,
The small surface he had adjusted was a different story. It was smaller, and it acted with immense mechanical advantage, like a small lever moving a very large rock. By cranking in that extreme amount of nose-up trim, he forced the trim tab to deflect powerfully into the turbulent airflow. This tiny surface, acting alone, created enough aerodynamic force to physically push the larger, locked elevator upwards. It was like using a crowbar to pry open a jammed door. The trim tab was the crowbar. It broke the shockwave's grip on the elevator, allowing it to bite into the air once more. The moment the elevator moved, the plane's nose began to rise. And because he had dialed in such an extreme setting, the rise wasn't gentle, it was explosive. As the Thunderbolt claws its way back into the sky, its speed drops rapidly. The G-forces lessen. Blood returns to Davy's head. The blackness recedes, replaced by the familiar gray, and then, miraculously, by the brilliant blue of the sky above him. He's disoriented, nauseous, his head throbs. His vision clears to reveal he's in a steep climb, the engine sputtering in protest. Below him, the German farm he was seconds from obliterating is now just a tiny detail in a landscape that is once again safely distant. He's shaking uncontrollably. A wave of nausea washes over him, and he vomits inside his oxygen mask. He is alive. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He is flying. He is climbing. He has survived. He levels the plane off, his hands trembling as he grips the still vibrating stick. The radio is a mess of static and distant chatter. He has no idea where his squadron is, or where the enemy went. All he knows is that he is alone, thousands of feet above enemy territory, in a battered aircraft that smells of fear and vomit. He looks down at the trim wheel, still cranked to its extreme setting. He doesn't understand the physics of what just happened. He only knows one thing. He grabbed the wrong control, the one thing he was told would kill him, and it saved his life. He is alive, but he has no idea why.
The flight back to RAF Bodney in Norfolk is a lonely, surreal journey. Davy Foster flies on autopilot, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and residual terror. His P-47 feels different, wounded. The controls are sloppy, and there's a faint, unnerving vibration he can't quite place. Every creak of the fuselage sends a fresh jolt of adrenaline through him. He lands heavily, skipping the wheels on the runway, before wrestling the big fighter to a stop. As he taxis towards his hardstand, the ground crew can see something is wrong. The plane looks like it's been through hell. Several inspection panels are buckled, and there's a visible ripple in the aluminum skin near the wing roots, a telltale sign of extreme overstress. He kills the engine, and the sudden silence is deafening. For a long moment he just sits there in the cockpit, the stench of his own sickness filling the small space. He's exhausted, hollowed out. A crew chief climbs onto the wing, concern etched on his face, and helps a shaking, ashen-faced pilot out of the cockpit. The debriefing room is thick with cigarette smoke and the low murmur of pilots recounting the day's action. When it's Davy's turn, he tells his story haltingly, his voice barely a whisper. He expects to be grounded, maybe even court-martialed for breaking formation and panicking. He describes the dive, the FW-190, the horrifying realization that his controls were locked. He describes the sheer, unyielding force that held the stick in place. The intelligence officer, a major with tired eyes, listens patiently, nodding. He's heard this before, too many times. He's written the letters home for pilots who went into a dive and never came out. Went into cloud, failed to rejoin formation. That was the official explanation. The truth was a mystery, a deadly ghost in the machine that was claiming some of their best men and most valuable aircraft. Then Davy gets to the part that changes everything. Sir, I panicked. I grabbed the trim wheel. I rolled it all the way back. The room goes quiet. The other pilots look at him, a mixture of disbelief and morbid curiosity on their faces. The major puts down his pen and leans forward. You did what, Lieutenant? I used the elevator trim, sir. I cranked it nose up, all the way. There's a stunned silence. To the experienced pilots in the room, what Davy is describing is an act of insanity. It's like trying to stop a runaway train by throwing a pebble at it, a pebble that is also a bomb that could blow the whole thing up. An engineering officer is summoned. Davy, now the center of intense scrutiny, recounts the event again, describing the violent pullout, the blackout, the groaning of the airframe. The engineer listens, his expression shifting from skepticism to intense concentration. He begins to sketch on a notepad, drawing diagrams of an airfoil, of shockwaves, of control surfaces. He starts to talk about trim tabs, mechanical advantage, and airflow separation. The pilots, men of action and instinct, listen to the language of science and begin to understand. Davy hadn't been saved by a miracle. He had been saved by physics. In his blind panic, he had stumbled upon a brutal, unorthodox, but mechanically sound solution to the deadly puzzle of compressibility. He had used a small control surface to force a larger, paralyzed one back into action. Word of Lieutenant Foster's dive spreads like wildfire. It is not a tale of heroism, but something far more valuable, a tale of survival. Republic aviation engineers and USAAF test pilots at Wright Field in Ohio begin to investigate. They replicate the conditions in wind tunnels and then in harrowing real-world test flights. They confirm it. In a terminal velocity dive, when the main controls lock up, the elevator trim tab retains just enough authority to initiate a recovery. The procedure is refined. It's not taught as a primary technique, but as a last-ditch emergency measure. Pilots are warned of the extreme G-forces and the very real danger of structural failure, but now they have an answer. The Ghost has a name, and it has a weakness. A new section is written in the P-47 pilot's manual. When you are in a vertical dive and the stick is frozen solid, and the ground is rushing up to kill you, use the trim. The wrong lever becomes the right answer. The panic mistake of a 19-year-old rookie becomes official doctrine, a technique taught to thousands of Thunderbolt pilots, and later to pilots of other high-speed aircraft like the P-51 Mustang and the P-38 Lightning. No one will ever know how many lives were saved by that single desperate act over a German farm. It was a lesson written in terror, a doctrine born from a moment when a young man, seconds from death, did the one thing he was trained never to do.